Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. My guest today is Scott Marshall. He's the host of the As Unexpected podcast and president and CEO of the Institute for Shipboard Education, a 61-year-old non-profit that directs Semester at Sea, the world's leading comparative study abroad programme. Prior to joining that, Scott was a professor of management, vice provost and interim dean in the College of Business at Portland State University. Scott's experience at the Institute and Semester at Sea has given him first-hand understanding of what it takes to be a resilient leader and what it takes to build resilient teams, especially in uncertain, unpredictable times and situations, of which Scott has had a few at sea. This episode is in aid of the Coral Reef Alliance, Scott's charity of choice. Go to coral.org to find out more about this important organisation protecting our sea habitats for future generations. Hello, Scott. Thanks for joining me. Please introduce yourself and tell us about Semester at Sea.
Jeremy, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I am the president and CEO of a small nonprofit that's based in Fort Collins, Colorado, that runs a study abroad program called Semester at Sea. Program has been around about 62 years. It's got a long history, and yet every day seems new. We take college students to 8 to 10 countries. Half the time they're on a ship taking classes, and half the time they're exploring countries. 4 to 6 days each time. They walk away with 12 to 15 credit hours based on the U.S. higher education system to continue their degree programs. And I'm highly biased, but I think it is one of the most powerful experiences a young adult can have to set them on a course for a life of adventure and continuous learning.
Right, and it really does prepare them for what's out there in a way that being in a classroom really doesn't. That sort of experiential nature of it, where you can practice those human skills every day. And it's something that the workforce needs. It's something that leaders need for tomorrow, today, because it's tough out there. They're operating in discomfort, potentially, with transformation, short-term results that they need to bring in, ever-changing priorities, all of those things. So what really caught my attention on this, Scott, which I'd like to dive into, is how you build resilience and resilient leaders who come out of your program in the climate of where they're going to be joining the workforce today through your global education. And more importantly, how do you make it stick?
Yeah. So there's two lenses. One is the impact of our program on the young adults. The other lens is how do I build an organization that serves these young adults, because we are operating in a fairly complex environment and we have to have an organization that's highly resilient. So I'll go with the first lens initially to really look at what it means for these young adults to go through this program for about 105 days. The first thing I want to emphasize is most of these young adults, 18 to 22 years old, get on a ship and they don't know anybody really. So you got 500 to 540 young adults who are taking these college courses, getting on this ship, finding out who their roommate is, finding out who's in their classes, all new to them. What forms very quickly, Jeremy, is a community unlike any other. It's multi-generational with the faculty and staff and these with their kids on board and these young adults. And that community becomes a source of resilience. So I love that you use the word discomfort. What we oftentimes speak of is how do we ensure everyone is safe and frequently uncomfortable. It is through that discomfort and the safety and beauty of that community that allows people to understand how they become resilient long term. So over the course of 105 days, these college students will be on a ship. They'll get to a new country. They'll get into that country, face the new environment, learn about it politically, socially, culturally, eat the food, listen to the music, but have uncomfortable moments for sure. And then they come back on the ship and they spend time back in this community, reflecting, sharing. And over time, if you repeat that cycle, over time, they become more and more aware, consciously and unconsciously, of the value of community. So then people will start to design their own communities as they move forward in life. And that can be the home, it can be the neighborhood, it can be the school district, it can be the workplace, it can be all of those things that become community as sources of resilience. I think it's one of the most powerful parts of what our program can do because, again, you're putting people repeatedly in safe but uncomfortable situations that they have to then come back to the community and really consider what new ways do they need to think about the world. And I would say that that's similar to what we have to do here in an organization that has to be highly resilient because we're operating in this complex world. And so, how do you instill in an organization and its people a sense that, our mission is right, our care for each other is deep and sincere, and through any kind of shifts and changes that are imposed on us, we'll find our way through based on that mission and our commitment to our people. So I have to share both lenses because we live in both of those lenses all the time.
Yeah, I get that, and I really like the terminology community resilience and the other sources of resilience that build around that. Um, we talk, I don't know how many times I've heard we've got to get more comfortable in being uncomfortable, but we see it every day, and I can see what you do transplants these young adults in these situations and gives them some great learning opportunities, ultimately understanding that we're stronger together.
Yeah.
And so that care for each other, that deep and sincere and genuine care actually for each other comes out as part of the process. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, for sure. Again, picture yourself not well, you're on a cruise ship, but it's really a ship designed for this academic learning experience, what we call a living learning community. You're with 500 plus young adults and you're with the faculty and staff. There's actually these lifelong learners, it's adults who are there as well. So it's a multi-generational community that's formed fairly quickly. You're all commonly committed to getting a sense of what this community will be. You create that community as a participant. So you are creating a multi-generational community in the moment over the period of time. And you all go into this country, have different experiences, and you come back to that community and again have to share. How was I uncomfortable? What was the challenges for me? What's my narrative? How will I show up in this community this time? And then you go to the next country and you face that uncomfortable situation again, return to the community. And I just can't think of a better way to take a young person and put them in a situation repeatedly, but then show them the power of friendship, of companionship, of community, and what that can do for them for the rest of their lives.
Scott, as you're talking, I just wish that I could put some leaders and managers in business that I know through through 105 days of this and
Yeah.
see how they change. Which I suppose leads me to an obvious question then, or it, to appeal to you to bring out some of those success stories that you've seen over uh, before you joined as well of that 60 years of I think
Yeah,
you said 62 years of semester at sea. But I'd also like to hear that through a lens of what leaders in business should take note of from the learnings that you've seen and the outcomes that you see.
absolutely. So you're probably aware I run a podcast myself, not nearly as successful as yours, but I'm having fun with it, and it features Semester C alums, and it's all about their leadership journey. And so I get to surface the reflections of these leaders on their life and their career. And of course, they speak to the power of their semester C time. in their career. So I can give you a couple of short examples. There's a founder and CEO, Brandon Hill, who has created a point of sale technology for a company called Vori, VORI. And you listen to Brandon's story, and this is an extraordinary leader, relatively young, in his 30s, and yet so wise beyond his years, in my opinion, wiser than I was at that period of time for sure. And he speaks to how he grew so much in that short period of time on semester C, how it forced powerful self-reflection, how it caused him to really think about what does he care about and what does he want to bring to the world, and how is he going to show up in the workplace. And when you hear his story about how this startup faced dire circumstances in terms of cash flow, how he showed up for his people, the kind of transparency. He has built a company based on community, committed to changing the independent grocery industry in a very meaningful and profitable way. So he has a great story. I think about Melanie Woolman, who's the president CEO of United Way just down the road, not the national level, but the district level. And she, through her semester's experience, realized, I have to do something in the nonprofit sector. I have to do something that changes community. And United Way has been around a long time, and you think of it as this almost monolithic organization in the United States, but it has its massive challenges. How does it create the funding to serve its audience? What is unique to that audience? And Melanie, again, as a relatively young professional, is such an insightful, thoughtful leader coming into a president CEO position in her 30s with financial challenges, with programmatic challenges. And how does she bring that sensibility? Well, she goes to how do I build the right team? How do I build the right organization? How do I connect to my key stakeholders? And a program like Semester C really shifts people's perspective in their young years. We have lots of examples, over 70,000 alums, but I'm only going to share those two.
Yeah, I'd love to have time for the 70,000, but we've got some good outputs from here. And so relevant for leaders tuning in, and myself as a leader, of course, because we're always learning, no matter what we're doing. We're always faced with challenges and new opportunities. But that powerful self-reflection keeps us learning, keeps us changing, no matter where we are in our career. Figuring out what we care about that you talked about that Brandon does. How do we show up in the workplace, even if we're in a mood,
Yes,
good
yes.
mood, bad mood, who knows? That openness with people, and particularly as Melanie Woolman, as you talked about, the thread there, that really strong people thread, that team, the communication, almost like the glue of the organization. So that for her, being very thoughtful about that makes such a difference when you can bring
Yeah.
people along with the journey, I guess. So you took you inferred and indicated then that we've got to get our mind right about this. So I'm interested in order to move forward from some of these learnings, what are the mindset shifts that you see being tackled while you're at sea for 105 days? And what are the actions that arise from that really propel people like Brandon and Melanie forward to get to positive action?
Yeah. Number one mindset shift is we are both unique and the same. So each of us brings extraordinary wisdom and story to our lives and value to the world. And it is all based on a common humanity that exists across the world. They are not one against the other. These are things that we end up holding together all the time. There is extraordinary power in this. When we grow up in our own little neighborhoods, when we grow up in our little houses, we think, well, this is so unique and this is the world, and it's not, right? When we get out into the world and we see it, we first of all reflect and say, yeah, I am someone who brings unique strengths. and I can share that with the world. At the same time, I'm part of a humanity that is common, that has common needs. And just coming to that realization by experiencing the world through a program like Semester C has a lifelong impact, fundamentally lifelong impact. Second, we grow up again in our small neighborhoods, in our small counties, districts, states, and uh, we feel like this has a predictability to it, uh, maybe a simplicity to it. And through a process like Semester C, we realize the world is massively complex, it's uncertain, and we have to accept that. We have to accept it. And Semester C is going to show you how you accept it and use the word again. And you use the phrase you said so common. We have to be comfortable in discomfort, and that's a beautiful uh, realization that comes through Semester C. That these people have to be resilient, but underneath that resilience really is life will change, life is constantly in flux, it is uncomfortable, it's uncertain, and how do I navigate through it? And there's nothing steady about it. The last thing I would just say is, as we've already addressed, you realize that we are biologically, neuroscientifically connected to others. We do not sit in isolation. There is no such thing as singularity in humans. It is always connected, always there. And that's the beauty of these individuals and how they show up for their teams, for their clients, for their other stakeholders, is they show up with a sense that we are always connected. And getting the community on the vessel, on the ship, and just forming that community, they come to a almost innate sense of connectivity, neuroscientific, socially, that this is the power of who we are by that connection.
Yeah, it strikes me as a summary of what you just said, that it's the understanding as humans that we've got more in common than those things that divide us. We just choose to ignore that sometimes for whatever reason. And I'm I'm interested as you talk. Then I thought, yeah, we put these barriers in place in business or in politics, but I'll stick to business for this one. All right. um, with saying, right, so I'm the leader, I'm the manager, you're this, you're that, you're that. So from what I've heard, Scott, there are there are people on the boat, they haven't met. They're 105 days out there, stopping off at different countries, learning different things. Ultimately, though, all at the same level and all having a voice. So how do you make that? How do you make that sing? And how do those people take that away and actually do something with it to challenge the norms that we find in business or in our communities?
Yeah, that the work starts early with our voyagers for sure. Pre-voyage, we're getting them oriented, having them think about what is this experience they've signed up for. They initially may say, well, I just want to get on a ship and see all these countries, at the surface level. But how do you start to inculcate a sense of what this experience will be? How do you go from, I'm going to be a tourist and see all these countries, to I'm going to be a voyager who's truly discovering myself and other people? Like, how do you start that prep process? So that's pre-voyage, before the initial embarkation. You've got to start getting them a little bit uncomfortable with how they have to approach this. And so we do webinars that start to get their head around what this experience will be. And yes, they have to register for courses, they have to buy their airfare, they have to make their plans to join the voyage, but you also start to get them below that surface of what this adventure will be. And then from day one, when they get on that ship, who's your roommate? Who's your faculty members? Who's your resident director who's going to be there with you? Um, and how do you start to approach this? So there's a very intentional orientation when they get on the ship. What is the community? What are the boundaries in which you can operate? How will you approach the rest of this? understanding that the opportunity to be there is a privilege, that you get to do something so few get to do. And so take on the challenge, take it on. So you got to do a lot of prep because again, these are young people who grew up in wherever they grew up in a small town, in a large city, probably haven't met maybe haven't seen very many countries. So you got to do that work. So how do you carry it on? Well, first of all, what happens is so many extraordinary friendships form from that experience. And it is really the alumni from the voyages who carry on this experience, who have such unique stories. Just a little anecdote, Jeremy, is that these folks come off the ship and they sit down with their families, and the families ask them to share what was this like, and they don't know how to explain it. The only people who they can share is with people who had the common experience. So we actually prep them near the end of the voyage how to speak to people who haven't had this experience because it's just impossible to really capture in its gestalt. It's just not there. So what happens is these alumni have voyage reunions and trips together and support each other through their careers because they have this powerful common experience in their life. And of course, then we engage our alumni journey, their journeys post voyage as much as we can as they go about their own life and careers. Uh, have alumni events and so forth. But it's really the connectivity amongst those who had the voyage that carry on for each other.
I've been writing notes as you've been talking there, Scott. I'm just putting it into almost into a business context for leaders and even HR leaders, people leaders out there. So pre-voyage or pre-joining orientation, introduce a level of discomfort up front, talk about how they should be showing up, so therefore give them things to do up front that help prepare them for that. We talk about that a lot actually, elsewhere. Understand what they're signing up for, have mentors in place that they're dealing with when they're there. This intentional onboarding, as you were talking about, and the community outside of that that support it that have this common experience of what it's like in the workplace build. And this is cultural, this is what you're talking about here, is a strong culture, so powerful for many tuning in who want to kind of translate this into the workplace. And for me the obvious question that comes up is, gosh, how could you replicate something like this to introduce the power back into work, like Melanie and Brandon are perhaps doing in their businesses, right? So
Yeah, and
drip feed.
yeah, you've just done a fantastic summary of how we, in some ways, try to mirror what that voyage experience is like. So, you know, our selection process, it matters. Why are you signing up? Why are you applying for this job? Attitude is trumps aptitude. Like you got to have a sense of what you're really coming into if you want to work for this organization. Second, onboarding. We're going to set you up for success by not only giving you a sense of what the job will be, but really who is it you're going to work with? What is the community? And so within the first 3 weeks of being on a job, any new employee has met with people in every department. They've gotten a sense of the organization. So it's not just did they get a laptop, did they set up their passwords, but really, did they get to know who it is they're going to be working with? And then we do reviews, but really we frame it around coaching and development. And we do it twice a year with ongoing feedback. This isn't about, just strictly performance metrics. We're here to develop you. And so we have to do that within our organization. And we hope that if someone leaves our organization, they can stay connected to us, still be part of our network. So yeah, it's that whole lifespan of how you bring people in, how do you create the right kind of community for which they will thrive.
Yeah, you've hit upon something that I was going to refine a final question for you, which is if there's one thing that you could change in the workplaces that you see out there, other businesses that you see out there for the good of our people, for the empowerment of people, what that would be and how you would lead it. You've picked up how you would lead it, which is great. What would you change as you look into other businesses from your experience of working with such amazing people?
So this has been something you've looked at a lot, and your guests have looked at a lot, and so I won't offer anything new. I will just tell you that I need to reinforce it as you have and your other guests have, that the legacy we will leave is the relationships that we built.
Mm.
And so are we creating organizations in which we are thinking about how those who are younger, newer in their careers, developing their perspective and their hopes, how are we investing ourselves in them? And sometimes there's a scale challenge. Someone's operating a massive department or they're head of a massive organization. I get it. You can't, if, we have 45 employees. I actually know the name of every employee. I know their job. I know most of them, what kind of pet they have. I know where they live, right? That's 45 people. I can do that. And some people, they're over 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people. You can't do that. But do you know 45? Do you know 50? Are you invested in them? I'm 58 years old. Maybe I've got 8, 10 years left in my career. How are the 30-year-olds in my organization going to thrive, and am I invested in their success? That doesn't mean they're going to be here for their whole life. That's not the point. But my legacy is the investment I made in their life.
And for me, you prove through what you do at Semester at Sea and the alumni, the community that you've been talking about, that it's about leaving a legacy in people, not for people, because
Yeah.
then they carry the torch, like your Brandon, like your Melanie, and the 70,000 others examples that you've got out there, which is such a powerful message for communities, for business, in life, whatever that is. I'd like to thank you very much for joining me. That's been a really thought-provoking conversation for me, and I'm sure for those tuning in. So how do they find out more about Semester at Sea and get in touch and keep the conversation going?
Yeah. So first of all, semesteratsea.org. Semesteratsea.org. Straightforward. Please look us up. And then, of course, myself, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the way to find me. Now, Scott Marshall is a pretty common name. So Scott Marshall Semester at Sea is probably the way to do that search. But I love LinkedIn as my only social media. I can't do any others. So find me there. Always open to connect. I love the worldwide network that LinkedIn can provide.
Yeah, me too. And we'll add that for those of you on YouTube right now. You'll see that at the bottom of your screen. For those of you on Spotify, Apple, Audible, whatever it is, it'll be in the show notes. Scott Marshall, thank you very much for joining me.
Jeremy, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blain. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.